Breaking news from college football. LSU firing head coach Brian Kelly after 4 seasons, our insider Matt Zenitz confirms. The decision comes after the Tigers got crushed at home by Texas A&M on Saturday. The loss dropped LSU out of the top 25, and that was the final straw for LSU, which entered the season with national championship expectations, but is on track to miss the playoffs in each of Kelly's 4 years in Baton Rouge. Kelly finishes with a 34-14 record at LSU and is owed a massive buyout of $54 million. We're now joined by CBS Sports national college football reporter Brandon Marcello on the heels of this news coming out of the college ranks. And we heard a little bit of rumblings, especially after that loss to Texas A&M, but I want to get your initial reaction to now the news being official.
Yeah, things weren't going to be too well when you see the governor of Louisiana talking about ticket prices after that game. And remember, this is a unique situation at LSU because they're in between school presidents right now. So the governor of the state of Louisiana, because it's a public university, is involved in the decision making when it came down to this with the firing of Brian Kelly. Listen, we're in an era here in college football where everything has to be so immediate. They feel like you have to be a big winner right away to keep pace with everything. And the moment the people there at LSU started to see them slipping a little bit and that they weren't going to be in contention, one for the SEC, let alone a college football playoff berth, they had to make the hard decision to move on from Brian Kelly, because at LSU, things are very, very stringent there when it comes to the expectations. And what's really crazy, if you think about this, is the last 2 coaches at LSU, Ed Orgeron and Brian Kelly, both won more than 70% of their games at LSU, and both were fired. That tells you just how high the expectations are there in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and then also the previous 3 LSU head coaches going on to win national championships within their first 4 seasons. Obviously, that not boding well for Brian Kelly. But what do you think ultimately tipped the balance for LSU leadership to make this move now rather than maybe letting things play out and waiting till season's end?
Well, Brian Kelly's not the most likable person. I think he kind of ruffles some feathers as well, just among the boosting circuit there and also among the athletics administrators. And today they had meetings, Brian Kelly did, with the athletics director discussing potential moves within his own staff about firing their offensive coordinator, Joe Sloan, which was one of the worst kept secrets in college football over the last 3 to 4 days, even before the A&M game. But apparently things got kind of blown up and came kind of head to head there. And it blossomed from there. More people started getting involved. As I said, the governor of the state of Louisiana. And at that point, there was really no coming back. This was something that was on thin ice already, something they were going to look at the end of the year and judge everything. But when you have a head coach that's there saying, hey, and kind of overreacts about a little bit of everything, about his control of the program and not wanting to be messed with, they decided to go ahead and pull the trigger.
Brandon, let's talk about the big headline here, because that buyout for firing Kelly without cause is reported at around $54 million. That is the second largest buyout in college football history. How does such a massive financial stake affect LSU?
Well, I think the good thing for them, it's a massive buyout, but according to his contract, they pay that out between here and to 2031 in equal monthly payments. So they don't owe him a big lump sum, which a lot of these contracts now are like that, where you owe as much as 50% or maybe even all of it within 30 to 60 days and then payments afterward. They're going to be able to kind of spread this out over the next 6 years. Still, that's a lot of money. What will be interesting to see is if there's some negotiations here with the buyout to lessen it a little bit. Also, Brian Kelly's buyout could be mitigated by a future job. So let's say he goes and gets a head coaching job somewhere else here in this coaching cycle. Whatever they pay him at his new job is going to offset that buyout, so that could end up helping LSU. In fact, that's what LSU's betting on, and for that matter, what Penn State was betting on when they let James Franklin go. They're expecting that these will be 2 names that will be in high demand for some of these jobs, because we're expecting a record-breaking coaching carousel with more than 30 openings across the FBS.
Let's build on that just a little bit more, because you say some of these names that are going to be highly looked at for some of these openings. What do you think is next for Brian Kelly?
Well, I think he'll probably take some time to rest and relax on this, but I would expect he's going to put his name in the hat for some of these jobs out there and some of the bigger ones. I mean, I could even hear him come up at Penn State potentially as they get their search going there. There's a lot of programs that you also have to look at that are kind of mid-tier in the power conferences that want to make a splash, right? They're going to be really kind of going after coaches that these other blue blood programs are going to probably take away from them. So you might try and get a retread coach at a place like a Virginia Tech or in Arkansas, guys that have won elsewhere, but maybe they were fired or let go, and you can bring them in and excite your fan base. It's going to be fascinating to watch because James Franklin, Brian Kelly, they're going to have options because right now, to be quite honest, the expectation is we're going to have more jobs open than qualified candidates to take over as head coaches. So this is going to be one of the craziest coaching cycles we have ever seen. And I don't think Brian Kelly or James Franklin, unless they want to sit on the couch, will be sitting on the couch next season. They'll be on the sideline wearing some other colors and teaching some players there to try and win a championship at another program.
Okay, speaking of some of these vacancies, we see them right here. It's a number of openings that are going to happen this offseason. I mean, you mentioned Florida, you mentioned Penn State among some others, but now that we're looking at LSU, which candidates, and I'm talking either internal or external, should maybe LSU look at to replace Kelly? Who or what makes the most sense just given their current roster?
Well, I'll tell you what, Lane Kiffin would obviously be an explosive hire, and they would have to fight Florida for that, but also they have to fight the college football playoff for that because Ole Miss is on the track to make the playoff, and I'm not so certain that Lane Kiffin would want to leave his team potentially while they're making a playoff run. And also, would LSU or Florida want to wait into January potentially when after their early signing period and also potentially after the one transfer portal window that starts January 2nd? That's a very tough ask. But other names I would really consider, but maybe LSU would actually look down on, is an in-state coach. That's Tulane coach John Summerall. He's someone whose name is going to come up in some other searches potentially here later on, especially if the job at Auburn comes open later this year. John Summerall is someone that will be targeted there, I'm told. And then also at Ole Miss, if Lane Kiffin were to leave for Florida, for example, I think John Summerall is someone that could be looked at for Ole Miss. So there's a lot of coaches out there at the group of 6 level that could get some looks, but jobs like LSU and Florida, they're going to want to make a big splash and go after someone big here. I would be very fascinated to see if athletics director Scott Woodard, who is a guy who wants to make big splashes, every single one of his hires or near hires have been like that. Even back when Jimbo Fisher was at Texas A&M, remember, the reason why Jimbo Fisher got that big contract at Texas A&M the second time was because they were afraid LSU and that athletics director was going to come calling and throw all the money in the world at him. If he is leading this search once again, they're going to throw a lot of money at some big-time candidates and maybe even have a surprise or two up their sleeve.
LSU, one of those schools that maybe will be making a big splash this offseason with this coaching carousel. And nonetheless, Brian Kelly also will probably be making a big splash wherever he does land. Nonetheless, Brandon, we appreciate you being on top of this news. We'll definitely be checking back in as things continue. Taking a look at the LSU's last 3 national championships. Well, the last one coming in 2019, that was in their head coach's 3rd year of his tenure. Les Miles back in 2007 in his 3rd. I mentioned the stat earlier. Their last 3 head coaches have all gone on to win national championships within their first 4 seasons. It was year 4, and they're not headed that way. Parting ways now with Brian Kelly.